Okay, I'm gonna get this stuff all connected up. I checked out the glue in all cases. It's nice and rigid, but you'll notice if you look closely, I took this connection back and down here in my face where I could pinch that ring on because it's gonna be tight here. We're gonna be trying to be, through this opening with this facing down, and then we're gonna go to a short piece that'll allow us to jump into another T, connect up here, and then this of course feeds our faucet upstairs. So that goes up and out of sight, plenty long. Same with this hot, there's plenty of length on it there, which will be finished up in the cabinet under the sink. So now I can take this end over in there, crimp, and finally take this end up through the hole and crimp. And I haven't got to do more than what's necessary. I could work on this stuff right out here where it's a little bit handier to get in front of me. Make sure, because if you make an error, you got to cut this band with a little rotary tool, and it's pretty simple and straightforward. But if you have to take a band off, I normally trim the pecs back and start with a fresh end. And after a couple of times, the way that I like to plumb stuff with relaxed bends and stuff, if I keep taking more and more pecs as I make mistakes with my connections, areas like that get kind of tight. And so when we're all done here, I'll probably send, for example, this back in that direction, as much as possible, even if it just means sending this to the left in this opening when I fire foam it and letting the fire foam hold it left. So anyway, I finished this up here, and that will mean everything's done in the basement with water. Oh, no, I gotta do down there. Gotta get to the sink down there, so just hang tight. All right, I'm fairly content with that. Ed ran out to get me some more Talon type hold downs. I'm just using one of these gas line ones for now. I'm gonna grab the nail in kind. I don't know if I've got any here. I ran out like that type there. So we'll use those in here instead. A couple on there. I got the suspension hanger holding this off into the center line of this here and some armor. I'm gonna have Ed do the rest of the nail armor on. I put one there, but overall, you want to get all the new stuff protected. I've noticed here this stud, it's probably hard to see, but it's twisted clockwise across the top. It doesn't seem to want to go back, and it's got to be one that's got all this other stuff going on with it. So, worst case scenario here, sometimes you can cut these off and just replace it. And sister, it's kind of ugly, but it certainly works. So at some point here, I'm going to either fight with this myself or have Chris fight with it. He's going to be here day after tomorrow, but it's going to pull our box, our vanity light box is set for the drywall's depth. But if it's turned, it'll be practically flush with the drywall up here on this side. It might be easier to see on the other. So you get the idea. That one had to be the twisty boy, and it's just how luck works out sometimes. He's the most complicated stick in this whole room, doing all these different things. So anyway, he's really messed up. And so we got to fix that. So I can't forget that. But I added a block here and towed it in. I used the copper strap over the copper stub out just as a matter of principle. And same thing over here. So these are nice and rigid. I'll tap up those nails a little bit further. Those have some rings on them as well, the roofing nails. So that's nice. Once they're in there, they kind of stay in there. Some suspension clamps in here and another copper clamp holding that stub out nice and rigid. Nothing worse than those being floppy. And you don't use them all the time, but they can get. The thing about under the sink is you store stuff, and if they get bumped and stuff, over time they get all janked out, and this way they shouldn't, hopefully. I like to keep them up too, above the drain, so that whole sort of airspace is one solid unit when you retrofit and they come in farther away and in different places, like in a lot of rental property type situations, DIYers, that's when they get all sort of easily disrupted and broken. So, avoiding all of that. I got some more black pipe. I guess we'll set up and do this now. We got to bring the gas down for the dryer. I've got a 4-foot nipple, but I think I might want a 5, and I might just use this hole that we made to turn the monkey wrench. I was gonna be over here, but then you gotta do the valve outside the drywall, obviously, so you can turn it on and off. And then you gotta connect the flex line from the dryer, so rather than pointing the valve out and then the flex line and the turn down, holding this like 5 or 6 inches off the wall, I'm gonna roll from the center line out and then just straight down with the valve pointed straight down, so the handle on it's kind of like a clock facing you. You can turn it on and off, and then the flex line can come up and connect, and it keeps everything kind of short. And it wouldn't hurt to be behind the dryer, but it also would be just probably better to be over here and to happen sort of the area where that nipple is there. And so down into the side of the dryer, you can see that the valve's either on or off. And you could certainly scoot the dryer over to obscure it if you felt like it. But if you wanted to expose the valve, you're not overly crowding this sink area. Whereas if I came down over here and you wanted to move 6 or 8 inches over, so for whatever reason, so the machine went a little tighter to the wall, you end up taking too much space kind of. So that being said, that's where that opening is already. Do I like to do a hole saw hole for things like this? Just looks a little bit more professional. Yeah, but you know, at the end of the day, we'll take what we can get. So it makes that opening that I cut in there do double duty, and we'll be needing that to use the wrench in there to tighten everything up again. Oh, and I have room to throw the T in to the right of that elbow, right? Yeah. So close nipple or short nipple to the T will face right out this way, and then we can go put all the rest of that together the way that it used to be. And then I can just run, I got a handful of different nipple lengths to see what puts me after an elbow, you know, in the center line of this wall, not too far in or out. And then once I'm there, I think I want a 5 foot. I got a 4 foot and I should have gotten the 5. So I'll have, maybe Ed's out right now getting me those Talon hold downs. I'll have to call him and see if he can stop at Ace and get me the 5 foot nipple. We'll take this back later. That puts my valve below the plane on the top of the machine, which I like as well. So let's get that much done. Well, if we go up here and look now, I made myself a little doorway over here to get that spun apart, because you get all done, we need to come back out and turn and connect up to this, and we have effectively added at least 4 inches approximately in terms of that close nipple and that T. And so we no longer want our 12-inch nipple on the end here. Ooh, I went with the 8, long story short. For yins guys that plumb, you're already 10 steps ahead of me. But here, you know, is wildly, this is actually bent out. It was dog-legged before. So anyway, we'll be with an 8-inch nipple that we pick up off the floor. Oh no, lucky duck. Oh, I jinxed it. So before we open them from the package, individually wrapped like Ace does, we'll just see that about yay, and we're about there, which is room enough for our elbow ski. And that'll put us so where we don't even have to really dog leg. You know, so that raises the question. I want to be able to get that holder in there that we used before, which that split ring, I don't know where that ended up going. Took it right down and set it aside, and who knows. Ooh, but I've got that same thing over there from the supplier. That's just regular style, no plastic. We might go back up to a 10 so that we can get back out and dogleg in the hose to there. Boy, it just doesn't seem, that seems like too much. Although we can get over there, it makes it seem unprofessional. I'm gonna roll up and off of there. Well, maybe not because of the room to wrench that it affords you. I'll debate that when I'm not waiting around killing time on the phone while you're listening to me think, because it doesn't sound good when I think. We'll do something like that. We'll twist everything back up again, and I'll probably use my street elbow up there in the T to get turned toward us, because if I were to, it's just a waste of a nipple, and we'll be down more with the center line. I want to turn toward us and then turn and come down through here. And if I add a nipple and an elbow, I'm going to be real tight. It's going to be real snug and weird. Just want to leave room for wrenching when you can. So I'm a big fan of street elbows. Try to think, there's one there. Try to think when they'll be appropriate and utilize them. All right, let's put more gas line together. All right, I'll just mention quickly, I have to tip this T up to be able to turn this street elbow in next to the sill plate, but I will do so, and then I can tip the whole assembly back down. So that hub's getting a little chewed up from the monkey wrench, but you know, what are you gonna do? And I'm glad that I went with that super close nipple, because my first concern was, you know, whether or not I could stack the T onto it and thread it in place, trying to swing it, you know, into the hole into this joist. But I end up needing it here to swing the elbow around as well. And it remains to be seen how I'm gonna turn that, because that's another little debacle situation. So let's see. Okay, here's a little something you can do if you can't get a wrench on something. You can often get locking pliers on there, and then, for example, I was able to bite the side of the plier, translate the position of that fitting out to here where I can actually swing the wrench. So there's that. I got to a certain point here where my dope needed to be on the ground as well as all over myself. But I also felt that I wanted to continue to turn this in, you know, and I don't have the ability to do so. There's some special tools that'll bite something like that and allow you to do this. But anyway, if you're not about to buy those, you can use yourself some vice grips. And so at this point, we're roughly in the center line of this wall. Now I can push this over. That's the nice thing about any 90 if I wanted to be tight. Now, if this stud was, you know, planar to the joist and where I cut the plate off, I'd probably do that and just use those steel type hold downs against the stud. But we're not going to be able to get over there tight enough, so we'll just stay normal at 90 degrees, basically. The next thing is, can we get this 5-foot nipple up into that fitting far enough and put an elbow on it and get it to miss when we turn out over that drain? So that's going to be close. And our options are going to go back to the 4-foot and have the valve and everything work out above the washer, which would be kind of a bummer. To me, after... well, it wasn't a lot of work to get a longer nipple, but this is where you get stuck not being able to make your own pipe nipples or pieces. If I was set up like a plumber is to thread pipe with a threader and all of that, which may be maybe down the road for me, I'm not sure. I don't do enough of this, you know. So we'll decide between the 4 and the 5, and we'll work that out, and we'll get out of the wall over here. And then we're going to go and sweat a couple of isolation valves on. First, we'll probably do the water supply in the bathroom, and then we're going to do the kitchen sink and see if we can get that to work. And, we got to go in here and connect to those elbows that they left for us too. So we got to get the press tool and go up in there and try to finagle that connection. So then we can kick the water on, and it will push air, and it won't reach, like it'll blow, the cold will be all that we get to the toilet. Oh, I got to put the stub outs in the cupboard upstairs too. So I know I preach a lot about working in the right order, but I got Ed living here and he wants his gas. You know, he had gas for a day or two so he could cook, and then I took it away and it hasn't come back. So I'll get that put back together again. Then I wanted to get all the rest of these things connected, and so we'll get the stub outs in the upstairs bathroom and connect that water. And then each of the stub outs that we don't cut off, there'll be an air bubble that the water pressure pushes and it'll just sit there. Meanwhile, you know, and that's, you know, in the event that we energize or get the water flowing, none of this down in the basement stuff will have anything, you know, trying to come out, no water trying to come out. If water it can push, I'll hear that bubble being, you know, leaked, and then we'll start spraying water and I'll know that we've got a bad crimp somewhere. But ideally, that won't be the case, and I can turn on the hot and the cold when I get the toilet set up in the kitchen sink, and the kitchen sink will get hot and cold water. The toilet will get the cold water, so you won't have to go fetch it to be able to flush, and that'll be the state until I can come back And the next thing we're going to do is cut in and go upstairs. But really what that may mean is I would drill some holes here and hang the pecs down and do all the building and stuff that I want to do upstairs. And then when I'm all done with that, down to the stub outs, and I'm connected to the shower upstairs, sink stub outs and toilet stub out, all connected up there. And here's all that I need to do. Well, then I'll cut it once, put the T's in, connect those ends, and buckle everything together right there. And then everything's got, you know, is a sealed system, and you can leave stub outs, and that's what they're designed to do. Well, we put drywall around, etc. The water pressure's on. We've got no problems. And of course, you got to turn it off to cut those off and put the isolation valves on. But as soon as you've done that, you can turn the water pressure back on. So we're going to try to mitigate the on-off water pressure and the cutting and making water messes. However, with PEX, you haven't got to worry about it disrupting your soldering, which is the unfortunate, problem with having water get into the system and then having to come back and solder. I intend to solder these isolation valves on, and it's a real pain in the butt when there's been water in the system. And so I like to leave it where it's pushed air, and then if I'm coming to do that, when I cut them off, I'll have let the water out somewhere else. And basically we don't get a big flood of water and have it laying in there when I'm trying to solder, because it makes it a pain in the ass. But be that as it may, I've got to finish up this gas and then move on. Well, that worked out pretty well. And so this one's actually more rigid because the flange is near to the, actually that's more to do with it being trapped back in there actually, because the flange doesn't quite touch that vent, but it's really rigid. This one here has a little more flexibility because we're out in space over here, but I will probably end up fire foaming behind that, and you would be surprised how it seems squishy, but only a little, and after that it starts to really resist. This could be flush cut with a long razor blade, and then Ed can lay out, although we've got a mechanical, whoa, don't lose that, Chaz. We've got a mechanical faucet stop. Gotta keep that little springy dingy. It's supposed to go on the back of there into there. So anyway, we'll probably have to take that away. And this, I don't know why that's bent like that, irritating. Take this down tube away, and then the back can be pushed straight in. It's going to be smaller than the face frame all the way around. And so I'd probably have to go in 2 halves. Which, if it was me, I would cut right through the center line of these holes that it'll have. That way we've got the ability to screw it here, and there, and that'll be sort of all right. These should be quite planar with those blocks, but we can't screw into them. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll end up gluing another piece of 1.5" material, or what did I do? Oh, that's a piece of LVL, so I don't know. Oh, actually, I cut this one down. They were both about that big, so the other half of that could be used here to give this back a third anchor point. But I don't want to trap this hot or cold water behind it and end up with, look at this. That's, that's the finish nail that holds the baseboard. There's another one right there. Sorry, it's too bright. But anyway, the finish nails that hold the baseboard in the other room. It's obviously not going to be taken off anytime soon, but if someone should put it back again, so what I'll probably do is I'll slide some of that nail armor. I'll pull this away from the wall, and I'll slide those long nail armor things. I'll probably clip the points off of it. Or maybe I'll put it the other way around, try to push it into the drywall. But either way, and try and protect it from the other side from nail penetrations. And then, well, in here we'll just have to see. So anyway, because you really shouldn't be working a lot underneath the sink cabinet when you're done putting it back into it. You can do it, put it back into it. All right, let's go back and work on that gas line. And we're back. All I had to do was loosen up this band clamp with a screwdriver. Little tap-tappy-do to the exhaust, which I drove up and over in here. Okay, so he can go right out his hole. Since I didn't jump right over fire foaming or whatever around the openings that they drilled, I had that flexibility. So now, the power press is still gonna probably be the ticket because the hand tool just doesn't open as significantly as this one does in such a tiny space. That's most of the efficiency of this power press. It's like 50-50 between the fact that I can open it that wide without having to swing those big handles on the hand operated one, and the fact that I can apply, as long as I can bite that thing, I can apply pressure without having to exert myself mechanically. God almighty. People got to call just long enough for me to give up trying to do something and then hang up right as I do. Okay, I'm out of shoulder strength. I can't get as close as I want to get because of the confounded camera. Hang on. All right, Ed's got this cleaned up, and he's making the back of the cupboard, and then I'm going to throw the valves on. I got some water supply lines that are 3/8 compression to 3/8 compression, which will mean the shutoff valve, it'll connect. And then up there, I guess I don't have a light, but it's regular malleable copper compression. So I got a fitting that goes from one to the next. So that's 3/4 compression that'll go on. You'll throw that nut out and the ferrule, and it'll be replaced by this nut and little rubber gasket. And the other end will actually use the ferrule. Maybe it's the other way around. But anyway, one of the ferrules will be used. No, I take that back. Just the nut left on the copper will be used right there. And that will spin down on and draw that copper line onto that adapter fitting, and thereby we'll go from the old existing water line to a new style valve. But once these push to connect, I'm going with push to connect valves. I was going to solder, but it adds 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 impossibly tight and diabolically difficult to make any adjustments to, kind of joinery, and I don't want to mess with that here because it's all just too tricky to get in there and deal with it. This way it'll be push to connect, no problems. The one thing about push to connect is it can clock all the way around. There's nothing, and you don't want to go around and around because you can get a little piece of dirt that slices up the seal. So you don't want it to go around and around, but that's annoying when you go to turn it on and off because you're spinning the handle, and the handle wants to turn the body of the valve a little bit against the hose, but you don't do all that much. It's there incidentally if you need it to isolate. So we'll go push to connect valves on all this stuff here. That way I'm not using the fire and the flame next to the wood or anything else. And you can get these like escutcheon beauty things in plastic now, but you can't put those on there and then solder or they'll start on fire. So I ended up with metal ones. They'll work in any case. So, and then you got to have yourself a box flange, which obscures the penetration. The P-trap into the adapter, the box flange will go onto that and finish that out real nice. If anybody gets on their hands and knees and crawls to the back of your kitchen cupboards or your bathroom vanity cupboard, it'll look professional. Let's get all that stuff in place. All right, I ended up keeping these existing fittings, brass. I realized they're exactly what I needed, so I just retightened onto the crush ferrule on the copper side and put the compression / rubber gasket, basically, end of the feed hose onto it, put the other end of it onto the shutoff. So that's 1/2 inch push to connect to 3/8 compression, 3/8 compression to brass to 1/4 compression with a ferrule for this sink. The box flange doesn't sit back far enough on to the P-trap nut because this wall is so thin. I couldn't put that on the center line of a 2x4 wall. It's right at the back of this ultra thin wall. It's nearer to us by about that much. So I'll see if I can't find another split. It could be a plastic, a scooching like ring, and they just split, and you just kind of put them around and let them line back up again, just to obscure that, if it was really that important to me, which it may or may not be, who knows. But for now, these are off, and so we'll go kick on the water supply and see what happens here. Well, if we flush, yeah, the water fills back up again. And if we go over here to the old bathroom sink and we open the drain, which glows because there's a light going on in the cupboard below, but I fully attached that. Let's just see. Oops. Turn that on. Turn that on. Open. Often the P-trap will leak a little bit until you find just exactly where and what you need to stop it. Oh, no water drippy do there. Turn this off. Get my other wrench and my other wrench. My brother Daryl and my other brother Daryl. Knock that off. I hate those mechanical traps. For that reason, we'll just put a little more English on this. As soon as we find our angle of attack, laying on the floor again. Which is it, the copper side? Is it the copper side or the compression? That's the copper. So we're gonna hold the middle and twist the upper nut. Twist your upper nut. Room, drop a wrench in my mouth and perform a little light dentistry. Is this running time lapse now? No. At least it's not running time lapse. You guys can watch me chase the drips here and then go and find a puddle somewhere else. But, oh, I know. Come on, baby. Making it worse or making it better? Crank it. A little more on, just a little more on. A little more on is here. Tension. Okay. I'll see if hot and cold. Does it go down? Seems to go quietly into the night, which is just what we always wanted. Want that water to dry up. That was a little bit of water pressure that was there when I initially turned on the cold, just to see if we had a catastrophic situation happening. Because then I would pretend like I didn't need to rebuild everything before we did this. You'll never know. No, this is Round one. So far, so good. Kitchen sink. Kitchen sink. Does it work? Does it stink? Ooh. All right, my friend. You've got hot and cold kitchen and bathroom and toilet cold and flushable fresh, depending on your definition. All right, well, Edward climbed in the tub here after I got that old hardware out, and gave us a little bit of a scrub on the orifices. So that's clean and dry, apparently. So then we get into a new tub drain. And it's going to be 1.5 inch assembly, but you're immediately going to go up to 2 inch for the route from the tub, as you would from a shower. It's a 2 inch drain, as you would from a washing machine. So you'll notice that this is all 1.5 inch that you get. This is the copper one and brass. Well, brass actually. Brass and bronze, one that was in there, and it was slightly different. There's adjustability. It's more like a P-trap construction where this slides into there and that's snug down and this slides into here. Whereas this plastic one, I like this. If you can get it right, it'll be all glued and solvent glued up. So you notice that you're just going to copy what you got. You got a threaded orifice with no bolt bosses or holes or anything in it here at the bottom, and then you've got it's a lot of times it's the drain, but sometimes it's just a blind cover, which I think we're going to end up with on this one here. Replaces the drain control. So that's got 2 bolt holes for that. Takes a big gasket on it. And so that's there. Now, you might think that if you're trying to go straight out the back for any reason, that you could do that. But this is sanitary T, and it really doesn't have the geometry. It's straight on through there. It doesn't convince or direct the flow. And this is a very infrequent situation here, the water level going into the overflow on the tub, so it doesn't fill up and over the side. It'll go down here. And as a best practice from a vertical to a horizontal, you can't use a sanitary T this way. Sanitary T is to be used like this, so that materials fall over into something else like a waterfall. It's generally inline vertically. So it's to join a horizontal leg into a vertical as a waterfall. So you're kind of stuck gluing this in, like this to replicate that. And so then at that point, you want to turn and head downhill from here to where you join into the rest of the drain. So this is commonly just about at the plane of the subfloor. So you got the thickness of the subfloor, and then, by the time you turn, you're getting close to the bottom of especially a 2x8 joist. We'll see where we end up downstairs. I'll very likely go with a street elbow, where the hub end of it is there is no hub end on it. It goes right into this hub, and so we turn as basically as soon as possible. The only other option would be to get yourself a combination fitting, which is actually a Y with a 45, so it's got a much longer sweep, which can be used on its back that way, but it would mean that you'd have to modify these, and the fitment of all these legs, and when they're fully engaged, should get us to these locations on a conventional tub. So if I really had to do it in a pinch, it would probably pass inspection to use a combination, so that you could do this and stay at this elevation and not have to go down here and turn. And the difference is 5 or 6 inches in elevation, which may be a benefit. So I'll double, triple check that we don't need to do that here. But in any case, I will likely, because you can't hold this guy up from below and be in the tub as well and thread down into it with the component that holds it like snug to the tub. So you kind of need that connected to this part, connected to that part, so that the screws going through the tub, if you're doing this by yourself, everything's kind of hanging by that. So basically we're going to start by installing this and directing that downward, and then we'll see where we are down there. And if we need to make changes, we can get this part I can get Ed's help and rough that in onto the tub. And then if we're not going to be able to use this the way it's intended, we could set that aside, and I could try to cut in the combo, however we can make that work. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't want to waste too much time getting ahead of myself. But I also, by the way, glued this component onto this leg, that component onto that leg, because these don't have, there's nothing relative about this. As soon as you go into there, if you aren't clocked perfectly, well, then we got problems. So this is the most that I can build before pivoting, like build it on the bench, pivoting to attach it to the equipment, and then come back and wrestle in the last pieces and glue them in when those attachment points are where they should be on the equipment. Therefore, when we glue up those last joints, everything's clocked, perfect for the situation, which is the only thing that matters, is that it fits the current situation, which would be perfect. And generally, you could do a bunch of bench work to make sure these glue up perfectly, but I'm just not going to go that route, because if it was a plastic type like this, I'd probably put it together close and then go in there and dial it. I have to glue this stuff, and we're getting to a point where this is kind of old to a point where, first half of the 20th century instead of the second half of the 20th century, really getting to a point where something might be a little different, and that might need to be modified before it's glued. And if I don't do that, well, then there we are, cutting some out and putting a repair coupling in and doing something ugly. So anyway, long story short, I'm going to get back to work here, but you're going to notice that's the way I go about doing it for these reasons. Well, ended up needing a little more depth here. This is the sister joist and then the original joist. They're coplanar here. And then the original joist had been notched down in this location to accommodate the old tub system. We needed a little more room here. I guess just for that little bit of scallop. I ended up just jamming the hole saw in quick. I took way more than apparently what was necessary, but everything's solvent glued now and well applied to a cleaned porcelain or cast iron, whatever this is, and all of that. So we're gonna head that way. And I just realized now, looking from below, but you can see it from above, we're almost on the same center line with this toilet. So we're gonna go over with the toilet. Somewhere in the middle of the room, we're gonna go over to line up with the stack. And at that point, we're gonna just come over and tee in with a combo fitting that gets our tub, drain water headed in the right direction. So let's go down and see what that's gonna take to do in the ceiling. Okay, we got that sistered, and that really should have been done long ago. And the block and all that stuff that we monkeyed around with over and over and over again was just never going to be part of the final design here, and that's why we don't cross that bridge until we come to it. Now that we've got things structurally the way that they need to be, i.e. a double top plate on a studded wall in this region next to the stack with a joist extension or a sister long enough, etc., etc. Now I've pushed it up with the shore as much as I can, but you'll notice that the existing joists are about 1/4 of an inch taller or hanging down than the new lumber. That's just the way that it's milled. The new lumber is a 7 1/4 when you get a 2x8. It's a true 7 1/4. It used to be a 7 1/2. And so those existing joists will measure 7 1/2 inches. And so we're tight and snug to the bottom of the subfloor, and that difference in height is seen here. But we're going from, if you were to reskin the ceiling someday, you'll go from these singular existing joists. You'll attach to the singular existing joist right alongside a sister that's there structurally, and you'll continue to cover the ceiling right along without any issues. If you have a little bit of a proud just the last foot of that new lumber is a little proud of that old. You can just buzz that with a power planer overhead 1 second and you're on your way. So that little discrepancy, be that as it may. How do we do some plumbing planning plumbing? Now, we had some knowns. Toilet's gonna be there, that's known, so I installed a flange. I wanna be as high as I can because I've got to go downhill over to this position, and when I go into that stack, I'm going to go into, and this is where my fitting is. I forgot I had it glued it up from weeks ago when I was about to do something here and then changed my mind. This is a 4x3 sanitary tee where the material is going to roll in like that. But the lowest point that I can be here with where this comes in is this plane of the ceiling. So I should essentially install this as low as I can. Let me see if I can do this one-handed. But get the bottom edge of that opening tangent, you know, no higher than that, and I really don't have the ability to go much higher than that anyway. We want to be down here, start doing this, and that horizontal leg is breaking the plane of the ceiling in here. So we can get him in position, and we know he's going to be 90 degrees to the wall. We could get that all to happen, and we could get that last little piece between him and that hub fitting up there. So that would be where we need to go, as low as possible. As high as possible, I went with that flange that goes right into a hub of a fitting, right? So that is the flange stub. This is an elbow, a regular, the smallest radius at 90 that you can use once you get smashed all the way up there. That center line will be as high as possible to swing out through this subfloor and start. And so the difference between, well, really the difference between, you know, I might get another 1/4 of an inch, so 3/4 of an inch is really only good for 3 feet here. But it's going to have to work. We're going to get our fall, you know, to go over and down through there and then downhill as well on its way over there. And that's just because of a 2x8 floor system. Almost everything you see now, you'll see it's constructed with a 2x10 floor system. Structurally speaking, a lot of people start thinking, well, I could go, you know, with lighter lumber if I squeeze the footprint of the house down to where it would work for that and different things. Yeah, well, you're gonna make up your cost savings in playing these games with plumbing it, etc. I've got those special plates to go through the center of it because I can't go through the center of a 2x8 with a 3-inch hole the way that I can go through a 2x10 with a 3-inch hole. So, or slightly bigger than 3, but still. All this playing around because of this light, you know, sized lumber. Now, high as I can get, low as I can get, and in between will come together. The next question is how to tie in that tub. Well, to start with, we have to throw all the pieces of stuff that we had ready to show on the camera so we weren't boring you by putting all these things together, collecting them up and going up the ladder, which was already in place, but I moved it. So we get up here. Now I had talked about turning, which is one thing, but you have to have a trap here. See? This piece of equipment, unlike a toilet, hasn't got a trap that fills with water and stays filled to keep sewer gas from coming back out. So you got to have yourself, and I like a weld-in trap. There's no reason to come back and monkey around with it, and like a thread together style. It has serviceability, but you really shouldn't have to, and it is a potential for leakage. However, if I turn out with that street elbow to keep this whole thing as high up as possible, and then I turn into a trap, oh, problem. So I will in fact use the trap the other way, or you can use it, you know, whichever way, but basically somewhere here we will go up and down to make sure that we maximize the fact that this is not below the plane of the ceiling, but also we have other factors here. Because look at that, being at 90 degrees, it comes right down the side of this joist. When we get here in, we're going to tie into this 3-inch toilet line. Again, I set aside the piece, here it is. It's a combo. The toilet line's going to come over and through here. It'll be coming through in 3, and then we're going to swing over and grab, with this combo, the tub. And so maybe we can line right up, you know, to the side of the joist. But if it becomes handier to be like this anywhere in here, well, then we need to rotate the way this outlets to get over there, or I'm sorry, we could rotate this too. So we would do both. with the third hand that I don't have. But if we were to do that, we can move away from this line and still stay at 90 degrees by rotating this, so that we can move that fitting up and down. And I don't know yet what I want to do there. So basically what I'm getting at here is I chose to glue up this much, no more. I won't keep a going here and commit to the way that the trap all works until I've got the highest point and the lowest point for the toilet, and somewhere in here it's going to cross through these joists, so I got to spec out a place to do my drilling that isn't going to line up with any of the nail setups or screws. You know, I kind of stuck when I put this up last night. I tried to line these up with the other sisters so that if I choose a drill route, I don't miss them with one and hit them with the other, or vice versa. We want a nice clear drill route, so I got to check the other side here. Once we find that, I also have to see that I have the room to turn sideways, because I want to do that with long radius elbows. Because we don't have a ton of fall here, the least I can do is not make it turn a sharp corner and slow down. I would preserve as much energy and speed as I can by using a long radius. But at some point here, if we move this route too far, well, I can't get out and turn. So really it's a factor of this. And then we've also over here got to turn. Where am I here? We're going to need to turn and head back down to get to that fitting there. So at a certain point, I'm going to be all the way through the joist to try and be on that line with this hub. So that's going to make the hole through the joist that much bigger just to turn and go into that location. So that's a consideration. If I did that over here where it's a single layer, it will probably be easier than a double layer. I start to get into having a really big hole because of its thickness on that bend. So you may see me take that block down that was nonsensical anyway. Even that block's nonsensical. That was some other thing. I could peel both of those things off. And we could go through it just a minimum double layer there and stay in the single layer where we've got to turn into this stack. And that puts where that fitting falls to tie in that tub rather than over here. It puts it way down here. So I've got no worries about this elbow, because that's going to be like way down here. And so the trap is going to run down. Yeah. Oh, that tub jumps in the bay right next to. So we go through. There's nothing going on. There's the ceiling bay that the toilet's on. There's nothing happening in this one. This is both the one where the tub ties in and the one where it's just prior to we turn into the wall. So there's a lot going on in that last bay. And so I'm just going to do some figuring here to make sure of everything before I drill one set of holes and they become the final holes. I don't want to have to replace anything else here or get into a situation. I mean, if everything was clear overhead, I'd be a little less concerned over making a silly error. As significant as it sounds, I can quickly sister or replace a single joist within an hour. Half an hour to an hour, I could completely replace a joist. Not when it's buried over there above kitchen cabinets and drywall and over here above kitchen cabinets and stuff. That's a situation I don't want to get into. So we're going to be absolutely sure of what we do here as far as drilling holes, and then we'll put our pieces of pipe in there and we'll feel good about it. Well, that was a bit sketchy because you've got to get the repair coupling slid up onto this piece, and know that when you glue up and swing over that you'll just have a little gap. And so I was fairly certain of that, but I didn't want to dry fit it and get stuck in there. And so I took a little bit more off right at the end before I installed that, just to make sure we went all the way in and as close to hub as possible there. And well, then you've got to get the repair coupling slid back down. So you want to juice it all up with a lot of glue, but I'm kind of at the end of the glue. And so then you got to beat that down. And I chose to put it on this piece rather than putting it on that piece, because trying to swing the hammer up, you're liable to clock yourself in the mouth when you got to get serious. So I was ready with a steel device that will sit as a bit of an angle on it so I can, you know, scoot all the way around, kind of inside around behind, inside around behind, and I could beat on the side of that while it's on this edge of this coupling with my hammer and slide that coupling down. I've got that piece of wood in there just to straighten that overall thing against the pressure of the foam setting up, which is actually bowing out my stud a little bit. Well, when that comes back, all the more it'll shove that right, which has got to go right a little bit to be straight, just like for things to look as sharp as possible. However, I just realized that, sure, we can go through these joists with that large hole that we need, but we can't notch. I don't think, we certainly aren't set up to come through really close to the bottom of the joist, which is where we're going to end up wanting to be here, really close to the bottom. We're going to be up closer to the middle. So all the more that I move that hole that goes through the joists down toward there, all the more I'm locked into having to do a dog leg or something to roll down and in there that you really can't do. So the farther away I stay in that central elevation, well, then when I come through into the bay that we got to be in, I can just rotate that elbow to come in at the angle that I want. So that's forced me back this way as far as I can go, which means just as soon as I can get there with this trap, I can then, you know, that can be where my 3-inch sort of line is. I'll give myself a little wiggle room because I will end up needing to glue in a piece of pipe anyway. Better not to be too tight and end up hubs interrupting one another. So I'll establish where that is, and I will end up drilling through these doubles out here, even though making my right-hand turn is going to be a weird, overly large hole to get the bending. Like if you were to slice this elbow, is the thing. If you were to cut this elbow, how do we got to be here? We've got to go to the right. So, you know, you're looking at it regardless. If you were to slice this elbow, if you're going to go through a hole in the joist here, well, it's a 3.5-inch circle, would handily fit that. But back here, we got to start going bigger and bigger. We can't go past this plane, I suppose. But so the biggest, the tightest we can get to this hub, if you were to cut this fitting, well, it'd be a big old oval, and the big axis of that oval will be out near to 5 inches. Then you got a real big hole you got to do. So we're going to get away here probably with just like a 4-inch hole to do that. And then over here, I'm not sure because you can't see how tight we are there. But I can also go at an angle slightly. I don't like to have to do that. Those real slight angles just make you look sloppy. So we'll see what ends up happening there. But I got to grab a lunch, and then we'll ante up and drill these puppies. Here's another thing I'm going to mention just for my sanity, okay? But we crept along avoiding that face frame in the bathroom upstairs for that cupboard and avoiding taking it out of our way so that one piece of subfloor could be installed here. And instead we did 3 separate pieces of subfloor, and I did angle the edges, but we also just blocked across, right? Ed saw that being obvious. You just jump across with a block. He wanted to go edgeways with it, but no, of course you do flat because you want to maximize what you've got for space over here, and he couldn't just see that concern or anything like that at the time. But here we got this blocking and we got that blocking, all because that piece of subfloor went in multiple pieces for that area of the bathroom floor upstairs. Now, if I want to avoid, I got to have the trap here, but then I can go right into my 3x2 fitting. There's room enough here, and so that fitting, the combo, where'd you go, combo? Here you are. If I wanted to be right here, okay, but that puts my route through the middle of that thing right where that block is. So if I go left, it's too much of a squeeze. I can't get anything. I can't get my trap and stuff in there. So we've got to move to the right to avoid it. We've got to move that way by 6 inches or so. Because if I were to come through there, this mend plate is designed for, I think it has to go like that. Yeah, these have to correspond. But this whole thing, the block would be in the way of putting that whole thing on the full side of the joist. oh, well, then you can come back and you can cut the little edge of that block off and slip this repair in and stuff, all that. You can always solve the problem, see? But really, what I'd rather is to not have to work around that block. So when I come to work upstairs, I take that face frame off and I do one piece of subfloor to avoid blocking, because I know blocking is going to cost us more time and energy later, and whether it was going to be that much or more doing that little, nipping the edge of it and sliding that plate up in there, you can't get those screws in that location, right? Got a couple screws here that we can't run in then, so we got to cut more. See, then you keep playing these games, or I move that route further over this way. But then we said, I've got to go downhill to get to there. And all the closer we go with that downward angle, all the more extreme it has to be to get from this elevation to that elevation. The farther away, the more shallow the angle. The more near, the more extreme the angle. And so then you may end up with a problem with fitment or any other number of things as a result. And that can go all the way back to choosing to just put a block across to catch that subfloor. So when Chazzy says best practices, don't do that. Best practices, don't do that. It doesn't mean I can't be bothered or I'm not clever enough to figure out a way around the problems that may come. It means that those clever solutions will involve running back and forth to the store to get materials that are necessary, taking the extra time. Sometimes it can mean safety. Sometimes it can mean burning up bits and blades that you didn't want to burn up. It could mean making that change and you damage something else and you wouldn't have even come close to damaging it if you hadn't been there trying to do that. Then it compounds, see, and all that time must be billed to the customer, or I'm losing money. I'm paying for that extra time and the mistakes, etc. Thereby, when it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. Best practices are good for your contractor, and they're good for you in the end when you're paying the time to do things. Because if you do things with the standards in mind and the way that we go about doing stuff as a rule of thumb, you almost always mitigate overall cost. All right, let's get back to it. Well, that really screws us, because like I say, to be on this side of this blocking, which the most important joist to have this plate on is this first one, because it is one whole joist all the way across the room, one existing joist. The others have got a full sister, and so even though we're putting a large diameter hole through it, the remaining lumber is doubled, or even more than doubled. Well, in the case of thinking about the thicker one is the existing, and the addition of the sister, it has more than doubled. But commonly, 2x8 now is this 1.5 over 1 3/4 thick. So in a lot of other situations, you would have doubled the amount of lumber that was still holding things. We're still going to use this repair plate, however. And I only ordered 2. We need 3. We got one here, we got to go through here, and we got to go through there to get over to there. Regardless, it'll hang out until another one arrives, and the way that these are designed, they can be added once the pipe is there. But I didn't want to just run my pipe blindly without thinking, because I have the flexibility to decide where it goes based on what makes installing these easy. So again, over here, can't work because I don't have the room for the fittings to stack up before I get to that route. So we got to move to the right. However, up here, you'll notice that this particular joist, which is extremely important and will have one big hole through it in this plate, and this little strip is going to help make that all happy joy. All of these screws on one side of the upper region are going into woefully deficient, if basically nothing, in terms of lumber, whereas over here they're over an inch from the edge of the joist, because there's a notch there. So we got to move to the right of even this blocking, which means now we don't have room for these against the tail of the joist coming from the other room until I cut that back. But I can't line up below with the Sawzall and just slice it off real nice, because we got the cupboards that were left here. And over there, I got to be really up and above, and I don't even have this sort of workroom. I got to go up in there with the oscillating tool and cut that all back. I'm sorry, not over there, but this one. And then this one. And again, if we're going to pick a route here, then we've got to come back and look at the condition of this, because really that missing area at the top means that if this little strip, this is not viable if that strip isn't installed with every single screw. The engineering for these pieces stipulates that that be attached to solid wood the rest of the way around. So I will need to go left at the very least to there, so that I've got full engagement, which means I need that much, the full end of that thing, block, cut back enough to try and get the screw up in it. I mean, I practically need at least half of it removed, but it's got glue holding, and it's doing a job. It's holding the edges of that subfloor aligned. What an absolute, oh boy. So I say what I say for very good reasons, and I get frustrated when people initially want to know why it is that I don't want to do something, because we can't right now see what the problem could be. And I say, well, you pay me an awful lot of money to have had the experience of knowing that this could very often bite you, and they just don't hear that. A lot of folks just don't hear that. So we're all going to be in the know, me and all of you folks who are watching, we're all in the know about why we do things even before we could possibly imagine what might come of it that would be a negative and make us sort of rue the day that we chose to just do something that is annoyingly non-standard, okay? We want to stick to procedure and standard process because it'll just make tough stuff go smooth. You'll kick your tools endlessly, but at the very least, a very complicated project like this one, we can be sure we can rest easy at night knowing we've mitigated as much cost as possible because we didn't do any of this shit. Although we did now. So here, enjoy the footage of me fixing the problem. All right, that's really good for it. Ups the resale value there. You notice I had to make a couple of these holes a bit bigger still. Once again, because while it's a large enough diameter straight on, as soon as you start trying to swing through it with these elbows, got to get larger. So what did I do there? The easiest way to re-drill a hole like that, it doesn't have a place to get a center drill started anymore. In a lot of cases, you can use the hole saw that cut the small hole that you're making larger. Even if you can't thread it up on your arbor, which I actually can't on mine, it'll sit there enough to lead this outer larger diameter to get started cutting. I left it in there for that operation. If you do that all the time, the threads on that can get kind of monkeyed up between, you can mess up the arbor maybe, and the thin wall thread that's in the hole saw itself, so maybe not the best idea to always do it that way. If you can stack them both up, thread the one on then the other, and then however your arbor works. But the idea is you could even put a much smaller hole saw on here and get it started in the hole that you drilled, and then it'll control the outer. You can also do the old cut through a block of wood and then stick the block of wood if you're trying to be larger and off the center line that was the original center line. So tricks like that. You can also start at an angle and just get a feel for it and just cut at an angle, kind of using it like a saddle to start the hole saw. And once you've cut enough, you can tip up as you're cutting and tip into it and go. So I've done a bit of both, just so we have a bit of a larger hole on either of the two end holes. That whole block had to come all the way out because the stick of 3-inch pipe that I needed would go up and through if there was nothing in front of it, and then straighten out and go in. And I wanted that because if I couldn't do that, I'd have to make two pieces and a repair coupling, and it gets even more complicated and ugly. Then, of course, you have a seam inside when the poopy's flowing along horizontally. I prefer to use repair couplings vertically when I can because stuff goes flying right by that little seam. rather than leaving it to hook and catch stuff all the time. So pulled that block down, which had been supporting our subfloor but is no longer, and then I can get that piece of pipe through there. So now the question is, what order to glue things? I think I'm going to get this trap from the tub over to the fitting that it connects into, because that's sort of central. If I build all of that and that's hanging out in space, well then I can add the stick to one end of it and the elbow and get over to the toilet, and I can add this stick and get the elbow and get over to the wall stack. And so that's, I think, how I'm going to work. There's no benefit to really working through that area from one side to the other that I can see, and so that's how we'll begin. I've also got a tricky angle to get from where the trap kicks me out slightly downhill to this fitting, and I'll have an easier time if I'm not trying to actually spin the fitting on 3-inch pipe, where, but instead I'm just putting it in space where it needs to be. So all that being said, what have we got to do now? I think we got to, I don't know, do something here. I'll get back. Well, Ed came by and I got to talking and forgot the phone was in my pocket, so I guess you don't get to see me build most of this here, but I mostly got the central, I got the trap from the tub in holding this component, then I got that 3-inch piece and that 3-inch piece in there, and then I put this elbow, after making sure of my measurements, I put the elbow on that stick and made one piece, glued up the hub end to the elbow, glued up the hub end to the sanitary tee, then went into that tee until the elbow would go in here, and made sure it went in, and the measurements, as such, we're going to make the pipe sort of parallel to the joist. So when I see that, and I'm not seeing any purple primer showing, mostly just a little extra, but I can use the purple primer, almost always use the purple primer to be sure that I've got things glued tightly. So you can see it just shows on all of this, quite a bit showing here, because of course that elbow hasn't been, glued in. I will likely put that elbow and that piece of pipe and that elbow together in one piece. And that's when I'm going to be sure of the ticks on that hub and on that hub, that they're straight and lined up. So this is 90 to that, because that isn't going downhill yet. It goes through there real close, eyeballing it. And then it can go on and then up, because otherwise I'm going to be stuck trying to, if I had glued that and that together, I couldn't go in without reefing that down against its glue up, and vice versa. So you want to pay attention to what's going to be possible to manipulate and not possible to manipulate. That was a straight in, so I could put it in as one piece. This is 3 dimensions. There's a Z, an X, and a Y in that component, and so it's got to be kind of made in one. It's just something you get a feel for with experience. I also set that laser up and looked at that stud, and it had bulged over against the pressure of trying to shove this stack straight. So I turned my quick grips around and pushed until it lined up with the laser line. And I'm going to do some more fire block foam, and then in the end it'll be held nice and straight for us. So when we come back to do a drywall repair, that'll be the scenario there, hopefully. And we're going nice and downhill over here, which is ideal. If we got the power of the flush and the straightness, the straight, head water pressure in the tub scenario or the shower, so long as we can get into that line, we can run right away, right at this elbow, which should promote a good amount of flow in this short little section here. The next question is, does this need to be vented? The overflow is a vent on the tub. Technically, that's a good question. Before I finish gluing this all together, I may need to cut that down or somewhere there. I'm not sure where I got it. We'll have to see what they're going to do here. So you want to think about that. But I need 13 inches of 3-inch pipe, and the only thing I got left is a 10-foot stick in the basement. I just as soon buy a 24-inch long stick from Home Depot or Lowe's, which commonly sell those. So I'm going to hold off on the drains And so at this point, before I cut into the water lines, which have got water pressure on them right now, I'm going to build down the water lines from the upstairs bathroom over and down into the basement before, I tie in. We're going to come from with 3/4. We're going to 3/4 up. And then we're going to tee and go around the corner in 3/4, but off the top with half, and go up hot and cold to the sink right there. And then we're also going to tee in the cold and go out with half, and we're going to go over and, oops, that's all we have is the sink right there on that wall. Yeah. So then we're going to come over in 3/4 and tee reduce off for the shower, hot and cold, and tee reduce to half and run over with cold for the toilet. And so I guess I better go get a stub out in the wall somewhere for the toilet, which I hadn't considered until right now, but I'm going to need to find a way to probably hole saw in through the subfloor and up through the plate of wherever the wall is upstairs. It's probably right. Yeah, our subfloor repair went to the wall. So the first 3.5 inches here, I got to figure out where I want to be. I'll probably drill a 3.5 inch hole saw hole through the subfloor board and the plate, and hope to drill in the wall above and do the same tricky like glue stub out situation. I should probably do that today since it's Friday, and that way it can set up all weekend like we did last weekend for that toilet water over there. So I guess that's my more pressing concern right now. Get that far and then see where we are here. Well, I got excited when I walked in here because I thought maybe that's a stud from far away, but you get closer and you find out no. And then you see there's the bottom, or there's the plate, the 2x4 lying there. However, and that's it here, right? And we can see that there's a stud right there. And I'm gonna try and get this to translate onto the camera, but I can tell there's a return there. But then this is hollow. There's the other drywall return. Which means I could probably like Kool-Aid Man right on through this wall. There's nothing in there vertically. Now, that's the whole idea behind putting a bunch of glue on here, is we're not going to be able to attach, even if we found the stud, we wouldn't be able to really attach to it without cutting a big hole in the wall here, which some may argue is worth doing, taking this hole, because I'm going to take this strip off and this strip off, even though there's been a bunch of hole repair here. You're just going to put one piece of drywall here. Well, if we're pulling all this drywall board down, and there's no studs in that wall, and if I'm not mistaken, no, that isn't a knee wall under the attic. That is a closet. So, yeah, wow. There you go. You'd be here trying to find something, which you can work in the closet and cut a hole in the wall and leave it there. But we're going to try and do all this without doing that. So again, I'm trying to keep the scope creep to a minimum. And we can make an attempt here, and if we run into an issue. Another thing that I can do, now that we got water pressure elsewhere, and considering that I'm going to build all of this, and the last thing I'm going to do is going to turn off the water pressure, cut these lines in, and then connect us. I can cut this stub out way down to this, just a couple inches long, which is what we would probably do, like before once it's installed. But that'll let me manipulate it and maneuver it a lot easier rather than having this big dongus thing on here, which is designed for, various situations where you're on the far side of an extra thick wall or something. It gives you all of the options that you might need for length there. So we can cut it down. We can put a nice big hole. So the idea is we only wanted to know where a stud was so that I could avoid a stud. Then start talking about how I know that there's a joist right here or so, and so it's one fewer joist on our way over to where the water's coming from if we're on this side of the toilet somewhere. One fewer joist and stuff that we've got to go through, a little bit less PEX length. We've also got this access hole here, so if we need to try to reach up in there and get something done closer to that, the better. So I'm gonna go for like here-ish, and so that just means that if this is a 6-inch tile and the grout line is approximately in the middle of the flange of the toilet, 6 inches this direction is a nice place to start, and another 6 is probably too much. So between 6 to 8 or 10 inches to this, whatever you want to call it, inboard to the plumbing system side of the flange, and we'll go get that hole drilled first. And then we run into any kind of problems there, because I know then that I can drill anywhere in this wall. If I drill in the wall first, it depends. See, if I drill in the wall and I find that we're on a stud, then I can be sure to move over one way or another and miss that stud when I drill up. If I drill up and find a stud, then I'm kind of screwed, because I can't easily fill that hole and reinforce that stud as easily as I can fill the hole that we misdrilled that went into a stud. I could fill that with, you know, repair plaster. But I'd really rather just go down and cut a hole up through the ceiling with reckless abandon. I can also say now, even though we covered it with linoleum, that yes, we took this plywood repair to the face of this wall, to the drywall. So if I go down and I stay in there and I stay 6 to 8 inches to that tub shower side of the toilet, that's just about where I want to drill my hole. And I know that if I stay a ½ inch away from that plywood's edge, I won't show up in that room or in the closet, unless of course that wall is a plank wall like over there, because it's just a closet. Then you'll see my hole saw hole. So where's my toilet? Right here. And so we want to be on this side of it. You'd think you could be about here and you could go with a conventional wall width. But if the wall's only this thick, then that crescent's going to come right up through the bottom corner of that closet. But I have to be of a certain size here, at least 2.5 inch circle, to get that flange to go through, unless I'm cutting the flange down, which can be done. Lots of things to think about. I'm gonna go see if I can find out. Let's come with me, children, while I knock my sawzall onto my own leg. Boy, this linoleum is gonna have all kinds of marks in it. It's too bad. It's really too bad that the kitchen couldn't be cleaned up and I couldn't work efficiently without tripping through everybody's personal effects constantly in this project. Yeah, we had a little problem here with the foam. Yeah, we just leave it to set up and then we rip it up. See, where it's wet, it just sticks. So we just leave things to cure up, and then they will come off far easier if you drip that stuff. If you smear it when it's wet, there is no telling how permanent it could be. How to determine how thick this wall is. You know what? That little access hole, I can just feel whether it's 1.5 inches, 2 inches deep, or it looks, yeah, that's if anything, wow, man alive, that's to my thumb. So that's extra thick. Good, good, good. Let's go drill holes in it. That worked out pretty nicely, and this here window is centered on my hole center, and I can tell that'll be the top of my plywood. I can see that upstairs in the bathroom. I'm not sure. So that must mean that this is subfloor, but there wasn't a full, it looks like 1.5 inches, but why it was missing? Oh, maybe that's the front. But why was there wood above it? I don't know what's going on. Oh, that was original framing. And that's 1.5 inches thick. And then there was this like stick of wood for some reason stuck on the front of it. And so all I've got to do then is set up my little drill gun with a 1-inch hole saw, which it might still be set up with. Oh no, that's in this drill. So bear with me here while I show you how we do this. We take the drill bit out of the wrong drill. Then we put the chuck key back on it, because if we don't, Jazz will skin us alive. And then we put it in this little drill, because of course this is the one that you want for this job. And then we tighten it up. See that? Nice. And then we go to drill, and we walk upstairs and we take the tape measure with us, so that I think we were 10 inches off the floor in the bathroom over there, and we're gonna end up with this stub out. We're gonna want that here. We'll take the tape so we can find that little pocket. Oh, we'll take a square, and a little pencil we got in our pocket. Let's take this speed square off our belt. It's real tough to be organized working in such incredible disorganization and disarray, but we will endeavor to persevere. There's our little hole down there, so we can be sure that somewhere here our adjustment knob for our camera angle can be as it should be, and it can be there. Cool. Then, just as we did in the other bathroom, we'll find a center line, that little pocket, and then we'll throw the square there, and we'll go up to 10. Knock the shit off the floor. This is something right here on the floor. Whatever that is, messing with us there. And then we'll be there and there. That'll do us with that pro mark that we put on the wall. And then we'll drill on our part. That's where our toilet water will come out. Oh, and over here we can probably get that circular plug that we had to push up, because of course that sole plate for the wall is true 2 inches, and our hole saws, Lord heaven help us if Lennox or Milwaukee or anybody but Diablo could make a hole saw that'd make it through anything more than 1.25 inches, or an 1.5 inches of today's dimensional lumber. Heaven forbid it be 2 1/8 inch long or 2 1/4 for people who work in timber and rough sawn lumber or old renovation. Boy, that would really just break the bank if we made the hole saw any longer. So people think I'm such a big Milwaukee fanboy. I will complain when complaints are merited. But of course you knew that about me already. Now, let's go clamp that stub out, cut it down shorter, make sure it fits up through the big hole, juice it up with construction adhesive, weasel it in up here and try to get it to stay long enough to run up here with the clamp and bite it with a clamp. Maybe we will just do like we did before and just pump the glue in from above, although there's nothing to stop us from doing it down here. The problem is, no matter what you do to position it with the pecs on it, with a long enough piece of pecs on it to not have to splice in, there's just so much tension on that pecs that trying to come back down the ladder again and get all the way upstairs and not disturb it to where it just goes floop and comes out and gets glue kind of on everything, and I don't know. That's the whole deal here. So we'll see what happens as soon as we turn the camera off. Okay, this is some super pro shit right here. Let's goober this up with adhesive and leave it overnight, over the weekend. Tell you, it will work a lot better with a smaller tip. The first tube that I used was open already, and so I recut the tip back just to make life easy, which makes for a larger opening and ultimately more of a pig mess. Now I'm actually trying to push that into and out through the back side, which is where we want that glue more than out here. Not to mention, I'm trying not to glue the clamp onto this little scenario, if I can help it. And we're gonna clean up the copper once the glue has set up next week to make sure that our push to connect valve makes a good seal. Because if we don't get a good seal on the push to connect valve, we end up with a leaky piece of shit. So that glue can just go there where it isn't hurting anyone. And that I'm fairly content with, because that glue gets nice and hard. And that can be sanded then. So, then all we gotta do is put the clamp, just to keep it from relaxing over the couple of days time and falling back into the wall. It's just not applying a lot of force. Whoops, that's gonna spin though, because of the weight of the clamp. So we're gonna clock it to where the arm of the clamp is already on the floor. I don't know if the microphone gets me way over here, guys, sorry. And then we're just gonna hold it mostly. Now when it was longer, I could pull on it, which I see now it was a mistake cutting it down for that reason. However, there. So, I set the clamp on the floor so it's not rotating the downward angle. Now let's go down and see that it's coming down through the hole at a reasonable angle. I'll leave the glue there. I'll take the light with us. The clamp is just keeping it from falling back. So let's see if it's where we want to be. So my concern is we're to one side. Yeah, we're to the left-hand side of the opening. So I want to tip it up like that, upstairs a tiny bit, and reclamp it. Try and hold that PEX to the center of that hole, which basically means the rear end of the stub out is pointed sort of straight down-ish, which is going to be more professional. And we just want to think about that, which means we want to do let go, bite. Nope. We want to rotate like, ooh, I can do it here. That's what I can do. That's nice. We got that little access hole. So with the access hole, I can hold us more where we want to be. Then I can close the clamp where it's not. Ooh, if my glove could get in the clamp and prevent it from being able to do its job, that would make me, like on a Friday at the end of the day, when I'm just dealing with more and more bullshit all the time, it would make me so happy. There. Now we're pinned there, and hopefully the stub out's doing more of a straight down maneuver, which no one will see or understand. But of course, there is some rhyme to my reason and some method to my madness. Yeah. What are you gonna do? Maybe the thing to do is also right here, back off this camera so you can see, and I'll just go over there to the other side of the ladder, which will then put us kind of there too. So, all right, that basically should be left alone. Now, Ed and his wife are going away for a week, all next week. No Ed helping us. But there'll be activity this weekend before they go. Can I trust that not getting bumped? Well, it'll be tomorrow anyway before somebody comes back through here. Hopefully by then. You know, the other thing I could do is hold it there somehow. Maybe I'll carefully put one of those PEX clamps, those suspension clamps on it, and screw that into the subfloor. Even if it doesn't stay, it'll make it so that anything out here that you do won't translate right up to that glue and screw it up in the least. So I'll get that done, but I'm on battery saver here, guys. So I'm gonna clean up and not leave everything lie on the floor and plug in batteries to charge and take home what I hope I need for the weekend. I gotta order a couple more of those plates. So they're getting here to do this side of that pair of sisters and this side of that pair of sisters. The one side of that single joist is enough, has enough plates. So that's 1, 2, 3 more of those at a cool $75 each, sort of. So pretty penny, you know, but that's what you got to have. Now, could I copy those in the future and draw the CAD myself and have them cut out a plate myself and stuff like that? Sure, but you get all done, and it's more cost effective to just buy them. They come with the screws and all that, and they have engineering documents, which I cannot provide. I could just say, hey, I copied what you can buy at the store, and they won't like that. So they're nice. They're going to work well for us. Here's another work week. Didn't quite get where I wanted. Stumbled through a few things that were, you know, not my fault, and that's all it takes to slow you down. Lots of stuff to take back, though. Lots of plumbing stuff. As soon as we're done with this drain, I'm going to wait and see if I need... I'm not compelled to put that last little piece in here, and I got to make sure and find out whether I need to vent that over to the stack, if it's just a little too far away. I've got the piece of pipe now that Ed went and got, so we're in good shape. Next week, I promise I'm going to button up this plumbing, and we'll move on to bigger and better things, i.e. insulation after we do all the electrical work, and then we're going to put drywall up, and we're going to close things up, put in the toilet and the sink upstairs, and the heaters have got to be taken to be flushed and blasted and painted, and then they'll be installed. Lots of cool stuff coming, but for right now, I think we've come to the end. Thanks for watching. We'll see. Okay, another thing we got to have here along with that toilet stub out are the stub outs for the sink water. We've got the shower, hot and cold connections here, and that round us out as far as water supply connections up here, and we got to have that stuff in place before we can get there with PEX. It really is unhandy to try and... You can go about it the other way, I suppose, but I really like to know where I'm headed because I can plan on it and sit here and look at it and tell myself this is, and just about right now when I know what I'm going to do, turn around and run PEX there instead, but then when I come back to actually do it, something may change enough to make me regret having done things in that order. So we'll see. My intention here is to be above and to either side of the sink drain. I'm at about 18 inches to the center line of that, which is a good height. 16 to 22, usually 16 to 20. So yeah, we're a little under 18 there with the center line, and we'll go to like 22, between 20 and 22 with the hot and cold water. And, you know, and the thing is, you don't want to be behind the vessel itself at the top, you know, so this is 27 or so or and a half before we're getting into where the sink comes through. And so we want to be able to access those things and not have them holding our sink basin away from the wall, yada, yada. You get down here, though, and you look on either side and above the sink drain. I mean, we couldn't be laterally to either side because, if anything, this sticks out more. I'm going to go as left as I can as we look at it here. Go as left as I can here. There's no point in trying to be there. It's too far away. And there's wildly too far away. So we're going to go up and left with the center line. I might even try to bare left with the hole. I'm not sure. And then that to the same degree right. We'll set the laser up here to make sure they're level to some degree. And then we're just going to glue these type of stub outs into the back of the drywall while I'll knock the cobwebs and shit off there. We'll put some construction adhesive on there, and those for right now also. This is something I can always come back and supplement that location. However, trying to reach out in there with a block and stuff like I did for the kitchen sink is going to be super unhandy over on this side. Mostly it's wildly unhandy because of this stack. If I could just jump straight across with a piece of wood right now, I'd just toe, and then drill, and then the top edge of the flange, we'd anchor with screws and we'd be rocking to go. But this guy here really complicates matters. So again, we'll stick to that gluing method. I'm going to wear the mask while I cut through this tile. Same as I did here, I set the hole saw to, I had to actually cut the pilot drill down so that it doesn't run into the back of the tile through this wall board until the teeth of the hole itself are starting to make a groove. Then I've got to stop, take the pilot out, and then follow that groove with just the diamond teeth to come straight through that tile because I can't come through it with that pilot bit. So I got to do all that monkeying around, get our holes in there just the way we like them. I got a mask I'm going to wear, like I say, because I don't know what this board, you know, it's always a good idea. If you think to yourself, hey, I could throw a mask on, you know, probably just throw a mask on. This is still unglued because I wasn't absolutely sure of everything here. In fact, that's going to be maybe a little helpful to me. I can sort of set him aside at the very least. So, and then we should really have plate down. This is all going to get fire foam probably. That's the way I'll do that. That could get fire foam. That could get fire foam because basically this wall plate should go to the back of that board. This should be separate. You shouldn't be able to come and go. That's the whole point of fire blocking and all of that. It really isn't. It would be a lot better to throw wood. Anyway, at least here I'll throw some wood, and then I can fire foam in there. This is a bit much to try and fire foam, and they're going to want to see some kind of plate here. See if I can put a 45 on a piece of 2x4 and block that in like that. maybe take this piece off because I've got subfloor here. So I'll take this block off of there, and then I can replace all of that, and I'll have something to screw into it there and screw into it there, although that's got to come up. I'll take the block and the subfloor off. Why is that board? I really shouldn't take the subfloor off. Well, I can. Take the block and the subfloor off, put a piece of plywood on there from one side to the other, then the 2x4 with the 45. That's a real nice repair there that won't take that much time. Foam, foam, foam. Or wood, wood, wood. I don't know. We'll see, all right? Just hang in there. Let's keep her moving. Well, I'm satisfied with that. They are fairly level and normal to the face of the wall, meaning 90 degrees off of it. That elbow stops a little bit short, but it's not the end of the world. I can always use a box flange, whether it's covering something or not, and you'll never know. The nut that I had, the adapter, is for 1.5 sink drains only, and you could get a little something to push that down, but I'd rather return him and get 1.25 inches, which is a bathroom sink drain size, glue in and just pop that in and not have extra pieces laying around. So I'll wait, but it's primed and ready for that. That stuff can set up. And now I'll go down and I guess I'm going to, let's just go look and I'll show you. I was talking last week about, this is Thanksgiving week, and I'm just gonna get this bathroom upstairs connected to water supply and drain and then call it. I got big projects to work on at home for the long holiday weekend. Anyway, you can only really be 6 feet away from a vent as the poo flows on a 3-inch line, which we're going to be greater than. That's about, a little over 4 to there. Another 3 there is 7. It's at least 8, if not 9, depending on what you, how you figure it. However, this vertical on the tub goes to the tub overflow, which is going to pull atmosphere, but it's going to pull it through a trap of standing water. So what you end up getting here is the toilet on its way by, potentially pulling the water out of the tub trap all the time, causing a stinky bathroom and a bad flush. So I think what we might end up needing to do is cutting a trap or a vent into here, adding a T, reducing sanitary T, or combo. Just basically tipped up and route a line over, turn, go over through here. The thing is that you need to get into the stack, and we've got this fitting and another fitting for the sink upstairs. And then the stack becomes cast iron. So it's a really unhandy thing to deal with. It makes you wish that you had maybe done something a little different. Because I don't know here, even if you tee in over here, you're kind of getting atmosphere from that as it goes by. I'm not quite sure what he wants to see here and what will make this work the best in this situation. So I may hold off on finishing up those drains for that reason. Right now, I think I can take that. I know I could take that elbow off, but I think that elbow's glued in, which is no problem. If I want to cut a fitting in there, I can just cut and pull him away, put the fitting on, and put him back in there. So now's the time. I got a couple more of those reinforcement plates now that I see just how many surfaces they've got to go on. We've got one there and there, but we got to have 1, 2, 3 more of them. And yeah, we'll get all that up as soon as it shows up and as soon as I'm comfortable with what I'm going to do to vent that. At this point, I got those gluing up to the upstairs sink and the toilet's gluing up with that thing there. I think that's where I'm going to call it for right now and make sure of every move I want to make after this. So I may or may not get back here before the holiday. I could also put this, see if there isn't 1 or 2 more things that I could do here. Maybe get the holes drilled and show the 3/4, because this is door, then door framing, then stack. So the only place that we can route the vertical water from upstairs is to the left of the stack as you look at it here. So that's where that patch is down here that I made a few weeks ago. The question is, how do we get there? Now I'm using even the lights down here, that outlet for a charger to get all my batteries topped up. So as you look at the stack here, we can only be there, which is perfect because it just means we'll clip that when there's no water pressure, crimp in a couple of T's and go straight upstairs with those lines. I'm gonna wanna drill up from down here so I don't risk hitting that water line. I just go 1, 2, basically right there, or that gas line either. You don't want to hit that. Sorry, guys. So we're just gonna go right there, and I could do that, and then I could go up in the double plate on top and drill corresponding holes, I suppose, or one way or another. Maybe the thing to do is to just drill them up there and stand the 3/4 in, because it looks like we're going to go with a 1/2 by 1/2 by 3/4, 1/2 by 1/2 by 3/4 down T on the cold, or no, 3/4 by 3/4 by half right there. So the 3/4 will come up, and then 3/4 will turn left, and it'll continue over here, and then it'll split into a 1/2 inch line to the toilet and a 1/2 inch line to the shower. Whereas the hot will be a 3/4 up to a 1/2 up to a 1/2 out the side, and the 1/2 will run over here and just go to the shower, and that'll be the end of our water lines in here, which will be nice. But got to know where that other vent is going to go if we're going to throw one in there. I might just, because I can keep it higher. It's got to go up at a 45 and then run along just below the subfloor, probably just below that block. That's going to hold me down. Then I'll stay at that elevation over here and have an easier time because this run is going downhill all the time. Then it'll be easier to fall down into the top corner of this route right before that stack as the stuff goes around the corner. That's going to have to constitute a vent because I just can't get anywhere else in there. It's going to have to be good enough. It certainly won't hurt anything. So that's got to happen. And so I need a few fittings and stuff there. Sorry, I'm just thinking here while we're running the camera, which we shouldn't do. I'll be back when I'm ready to make a move there. All right, I ended up with one big hole because, as you can see downstairs, I'll show you the trajectory we've got to get right into those lines down there. Being trapped by a singular hole and not having the ability to mix things up there is going to be annoying. In fact, I had been thinking I'd build all this and then come down and connect. However, the particularities of how I may find I want to connect once I've turned the water pressure off and cut in everything to locate those, T's. I don't know if I want cold in front or behind, hot in front or behind. We'll have to see that. And that will dictate the way that they come up, the different elevations that they terminate, the routes that they take down this joist, and the way that they split here is all based on, you can always cross them here on the joist or on the stud. I prefer not to do that. I like things to be well thought out. But we will be holding these over as well until the last sort of dog leg that makes sense to do comfortably over to that hole, and a little less or so here. Here we had to go beyond that joist. So, but you can see that this is why you line your framing up with your joists in the first and second floor. You should end up having a space through the floor system, up through the wall, and into the next floor system as close to dead on as you can. When you start sistering things, as things start passing, like the joist from the far side of the beam, the joist on the near side, and then a sister, at least they're all grouped right on about where the layout studs are in the wall, so it maximizes what you've got for a cavity. Because even if it's staggered, sure, you've got a half a cavity everywhere, and that's quite a lot of room, but it will screw you when you end up with multiple layers and have to sister something over, then you got a stack in part of it and there's nothing left to do anything. So we line up our framing, and so here we had to move over a little bit more to avoid that joist. Otherwise we could have been as tight to this stud as we are with the hole down here. Not a big deal here, but you can see how that adds up or can affect things. I've pulled those up just about as far as I'd have to have and clamped them so that I can see what I've got out of those actual pieces of PEX downstairs, if they're going to reach. Those are the one's a full 10, which is a skew from the store. Yeah, the red one is, and the blue has been cut. But it looks like I can get just what I need out of them both, and it looks like the T is going to be right there at the surface of the joist practically. So it may be a situation where I cut. No, it'll be off of there, and I'm not going to try and move over into the gas line in that route from the heat upstairs. So they basically are going to be cut right into those lines right there. That'll be an easy enough way. And it looks like then red will be at the back, right? Red will go to the back, and then blue will take off in front of it and come up at the front when you turn off of there. That's what's going to happen. So with that in mind, that'll dictate, like I say, how things are laid out upstairs. Unless it's a real problem for me, I can cross them on the stud on the way up there, whatever. But hopefully it won't be a big deal. And then when we're all done there, that'll get fire firm. So I probably can make, because if blue's in front, then he'll be shorter so that red can go across the top of him and go down the joist upstairs. So that stick of 3/4 blue would work for us, and the red stick will work for us. I have another little bit of 3/4 blue, but probably not enough. So I might want to go and get a full 10-foot stick. Those unopened rolls are going to go back. We won't need those. I'll probably get a full 10-foot stick of blue because, of course, I got to go across the ceiling up there to get to the shower toilet split. And so if I were to just buy a full length one, then I can use him here and use that, 9 feet to do that much up there, plus that little bit of extra. So we need another blue 3/4 stick. The red 3/4 is going to stop right up there, and we're going to jump into it with that half that's glued onto the faucet, and that's all we need for PEX. So we got more than enough of red. So we just got to write that one blue stick on the list of things to get. Need a couple 3 by 1.5, I think it is, or possibly 2 to vent that line. I'm not sure. I got to check that. But the reducing combos and the corresponding size of pipe, which I have a piece of 2 here, but not enough. So if we can go with 2 to vent, a lot of times those reducing fittings don't go down to 1.25 inches off the side. They go to 2. So then it's like, do you want to buy a bushing, yada yada, or just route it with 2 as a vent? Maybe that's not too much. We'll see. Sometimes the bigger size ends up with a bigger hole, ends up with more difficulty turning down if we're running along at a higher elevation and bending down. So maybe we will stick to 1.5. I'll see if the supplier has got a 3 by 1.5 reducing combo, although they never have combos. They don't like these combos. The pros don't seem to think that those are legit. See, there's one right there. See, it went from 3 to 2 right there. But then we had to bush right down to 1.5 immediately. So not a big deal, but we want to remember that we're doing it that way. And in the case of using 1.5, I don't have any, so we'll have to get a couple sticks. We've got a full 10-footer of 1.5, the 2 3x2 combos, 2 to 1.5 bushings, and then we can get that vented. We got the ability to drill it. We're going to want to vent it first and then go around the vent with those water lines. We don't want to get those all built on there and then try to come through there. This is going to be a bitch bastard because that's all glued up. So we're going to end up using a repair coupling in line there somewhere. So we're going to want a 3-inch repair coupling. And that will allow us to finish this stuff up. So I think we'll probably kill the day going to get that stuff. I got to get the truck to get an inspection and an alignment. I got a friend help me bleed the brakes on it so we can get there. I'm going to upload pretty soon here the video of doing the 3-inch lift to the work truck, and that ended up being why the brakes need to be bled and it needs an alignment, but I got to get that done today. That's some infrastructure stuff. So the truck's functional here, but in and around the holiday, we're going to go get those radiators finally, since it's been waiting on the truck lift that I decided to do to entertain myself for fun and profit. Not really, though. Debt or expense. So anyway, the radiators that are outside there, they're going to get on their way to be flushed and blasted and painted finally, and I got to have the truck to do that. So we're going to bug out of here to do that stuff since it's important infrastructure to support getting this project done. And then tomorrow we'll have those materials and hopefully the truck will be aligned and we can keep moving. And then we got the day after that is, Thanksgiving. That's the holiday. Thanksgiving. All right, keep her moving. Okay, well, like I expected and suspected, the Home Depot / Lowe's, they've got a 3x2 reducing sanitary tea. But the local plumbing supply, the Pro Supply, they've got the 3x1.5. And you need a 1.5 vent only on the 3-inch line. You need a 2-inch vent on a 4-inch line. And I forget, so much of this stuff, they keep it nice and round to be easy to remember. So 1/2 of your fluid drainage diameter is the size of your vent, minimum size of your vent. So another thing I had been considering was whether or not I could move and only have to go through 2 joists. That'll be the case now. I go down, I turn with the vent, and I go through, a sister joist and a single joist on my way over here. I was thinking in my head before I got here, could I catch after the tub and just have to go through one? It's going to be too tight down there, but and it's not going to work here either. But the problem is pulling a vacuum on this this material going by, drawing a vacuum on this trap and slowly drying that trap out. And if it's a week before somebody uses the shower or tub, or even just a few days and a couple of, flushes, a couple of people, you've pulled enough water out of that for it to leak sewer gas. So we've got to be upstream of that, and so this is the only logical place. That's where we'll cut those guys in. But like I said before, this whole thing is glued in, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut it off, figure out where here I want to be with this drain. It's tough to say because that joist is so compromised already. It would kind of probably want to be to the right of that. I don't think that there's... The farther downhill we get here, the more room we have to get up and over to a vent. We can't go right out the side of this because we can't have fluid flowing over in that vent. We've got to come down into this as well as in the direction of flow this way, just so that everything going by just keeps on going by and doesn't make its way into that vent at all. So within the center third of the joist that I can take, I want to be to the top of that hole with my run through here and the run over there. Now going through here, I don't have to worry about drilling any holes. I basically have to find a place. I'm going to lay out the central third of these 2 joists and drill that out and I just need to know whereabouts here. I got to start at a certain point so that the fitting isn't crashing hub to hub into that fitting. And from here all the way over is sort of available. And so I'll make some, have some considerations and ultimately choose where to drill that opening through there. But then to get that piece of pipe in, I'm going to have this out of the way. So whether I drill that first and then cut the section out of here or vice versa, this has got to be out of the way for me to get that piece of pipe up in there to here. And then I could glue an elbow on that, and I could come down here and get this fitting cut in. And I'm going to use a street 45 up and out of these. So we got to get this cut in at an angle as you look at it, and then we've got to get the street 45 in there to straighten it back out. And so that's the difference. And if we're going to do less, if we're going to climb less, I may need to do a street 22 and a half. I may need to go get some street 22 and a halves. And just pick this rotation based on where the 22 and a half comes up plumb or 90 to the axis of the route that's coming over. That's I'm going to wait to have before I glue this thing up. And so the order here, basically end of my little spiel, is going to be important. I can get that cut out of the way and the route picked and run through there. Turn come this way, and then figure out where to glue that 3 by 1.5 on to accommodate the 22.5 and getting up into that route, and whereabouts the length of that route has to end too, because once you do this, then the center line to the cut end of the piece of pipe coming in can be, measured or established, and it can be cut there. As this clocks, that gets longer and shorter, so you don't know how long to cut that piece. So I get that all figured out over here, and then the last thing will be clocking and cutting back this piece of pipe that I leave overly long to be a vent tied into there, and then add a piece of pipe and a repair sleeve to connect them back up again, and the drains will be complete here. And if I can get that far, I can get some water piping routed up and over to this area, that area routed, and then I'm going to leave that to just dangle overly long downstairs, because I could do everything I need to do down there, which will be cut it, put the T on the end of these pieces, and then finally turn off water pressure, cut into the lines that have water in them, let some of that fall out of there, and then get the T ends into it, clip, clip, or clamp, 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 clamp. Lots to do here, and immediately turn right around and go get those 22.5 street elbows. Well, I can do some work here, but eventually I got to run right out and get those. No matter what you do, plans change. All right, so what I did was I went up the ladder here, looking for how to choose my center line to drill. So I take my fitting and I orient it where I want, and I see that the hub's going to consume this much material, and so the parallaxing of the lens messes with this. However, if I make a mistake here for some reason, I'll be able to cut this fitting right off, cutting flush with that right-hand side hub. And then there will be enough for me to glue up one more time and salvage it, with all this here, just as a best practice. You could cut it just there and hope to squeeze right in tight and land. But if you need to change anything about that, you really got yourself a major problem. So I'll give myself one, sort of freebie. And if we have no issues, then so much the better. The other thing I'll do is I clock this around here, and I pushed it on as far as I was comfortable without it getting jammed. And then I look down on the hub. If this PEX doesn't get caught on my tripod, you can see that the hub these hubs have these little tick marks on them at 90 degrees. So I look right through that, and I put a line on the piece of lumber, the joist, and then I get a center line of the overall width, and that's gonna be where I drill my hole. And I know when I glue this back up again that route coming off can go, and again, we're gonna clock this up and then roll in through there as high as possible, but that's gonna probably take that 22.5 street, because we'd need to be way up there to get the 45 to work, and then we're like notching the top of the joist, which is a no bueno. So we're gonna make sure that, we're gonna drill what we can drill to give us as much room as we can to work through. If it needs to get bigger, well, we'll have to get the jigsaw up there and open it up bigger, and then use one of these repair plates around it. I'm gonna try to avoid that. It ought to be doable here. So that's what we've got for a center line. And then all I gotta do is just measure from the face of the plate over to this pencil line, transfer that over to there, go up to the middle of that, plot that out, drill, and then we can get our pipe through here and get our elbow on it, making it overly long so we can trim down to what we need. Same situation going down this way, we'll make that overly long, and we'll cut in this other reducing T. And then we'll run out and get those street bends and come back and see if we can get this thing plumbed up. You know what I'm saying, bruh? Okay, so I had a piece of 1.5 inch laying around before I got a cut into the new one I brought. And what happens when you're trying to thread it into a framing system like this, and you can't, it's not going to be any help to keep drilling holes and find a way outside to send it straight in there, and you don't want to put it in a bunch of pieces. A lot of times you can get stuff to roll up and in. Now we're going against a few things here, because this isn't a 16-inch on center from this original joist to that, so it's a little tighter. So there's a variety of things here, but what I ended up doing was I used the flap disc on the grinder to put a bevel on this, so the top corner, when it jams into that opening up here coming through, it's getting a little bit of a help blending right up there rather than cutting into that. Got to be a knot there, etc. But we've just got to go now, and I also had to cut it down just short enough to be able to go up here with this beam here to maximize my angle of attack as a factor of when we run into this joist here. So we're above there, down there you could use a longer stick, but you're sacrificing angle of attack. So here we get to there. Now oftentimes I'll hit that with the dead blow and tap it up and around and through, but I don't have the ability to swing and smack it there. This is just some plastic left on the wall. The rest of that doesn't really do with me. I'm going to use this 2x4 as a lever to try to leave no marks really, or a few marks, and just, so long as I get it to a certain point in here somewhere, or anywhere there, if I can lever behind that joist, then I can start and hit it with a hammer, get it the rest of the way. And then it'll slide back and forth. Oh, another thing that I could do right now, just to make my life real easy, is make sure that that length isn't any longer than, inside this joist to inside that joist, which is something you can do, which it often, in this case, it looks like it's already shorter than that, but there's no point in going all the way through both and then not being able to get this end to jump up and make it loose in that opening and have to come into a field cut there. So I'll check that too. Anyway, we'll get him in there, and then we have the ability to lay out on there whereabouts we want to cut it to roll into it from that little shallow bend, and where we want to do our elbow is a factor of where we can put that fitting in here and take off and go nice and parallel to these joists. I just want to keep this stuff looking sharp, even though it's going to be covered up. No reason to make a mess here. Also looks like we need a new battery in that. All right, at this point, I'm not going to be able to, and I have in other circumstances been able to pull that down enough to line up and smash it through there. Smaller diameter pipe, more spacing with the joists, etc., can change the situation. So you want to give yourself that flexibility. Now the game is go as close as I can to that joist without scrubbing, and then make a mark there and either cut it live or pull it back down and cut it there, so that when I go up to this point again, it can slip past there, and then it's free and I can find that. And if I go through there, then have I still got, and I believe I do, what I need to make that turn in an elbow and to roll into that fitting. So that'll be how we get that piece in there. I just don't know. You know, I want to give myself as much as possible. And that's why I'm not just choosing how to lay this all out in these sizes and putting everything up there. Because you make a big, plan early and make all your cuts and pieces and then start trying to put them in there. You can get into a pickle where you can change your mind and move it somewhere else. But now the pieces that you cut won't work. So I work in this order because it mitigates rework and it mitigates material waste. So it may seem a bit silly, but I have a very good mind for things like this as well. And it's a debate that Ed and I have had quite a bit on this project, because he wants to make a plan for all this stuff and then just work along 2 inches from his face according to his plan. And time and again, he does that, and then something changes, and everything that he's done beyond the change is worthless now. And so it works in what, types of projects that he does for a living, but it doesn't work in this realm. You want to mitigate any wasted material. You want to mitigate any rework or going backwards. And so this is the route that I take. If you're working on your own house, you can do as you like. But if it seems silly to you, this is so that I can keep everything orderly in my mind and work through variables one at a time, and normally not go backwards almost at all. And when I do, it not very far, at least. That's the name of the game here. So now we'll get that thing cut. We'll get it in there. And that's just to say, that means we'll have as much as humanly possible that can be easily installed. Then we can start deciding on whether we need all of that. We want to put this fitting way over here. We want to maximize the length of this for any reason. If you have to put it tight here and then run down there, you start running into things like we did these blocks. Like, who's going to mind the blocks? Can't see the blocks being in the way. Well, they ended up in the way of these fish plates. This is why we work like this. We maximize our avenues to success. We mitigate problems. We work in the right order. We leave ourselves flexibility all the way down to the very end, and then we choose the route that best applies to solving the problem, and then we move forward. It's just try to be smart about what we do, So if you gain anything watching me, it's a severe desire to go to bed because I've just put you to sleep by blathering. Sorry, back to Well, that turned into a bit of a rat race, or, you know, I got some flop sweat going there when things have all got to get glued together at the same time and fit, and you got to push on them and pull on them and hit them, and I don't know where my dead blow is. I have set it aside in here, and as you can imagine, that's the end of things. It helps that things are red, but still, there's a lot of stuff in here, and I've been missing it for a few days. Anyway, this time I chose not to prime the repair coupling, which left it sliding on here with no, risk of becoming kind of glued with the purple primer if I had purple primed the inside of it. So it was sliding on there dry, and I had to just slam that piece of pipe into that fitting until these two ends would pass, and they did only just. Then I had to tap them all around and get them to line up so they're nice and smooth. And then I had to juice it up with glue and send that coupling down over the second one so that it's at least on both of them, and then truly push it down. Where I was over here, I had set that bar on, it was hitting on the side edge of it. I had to run and get the bar, and I ultimately got those clamps from upstairs and turned them around so they would push. And you could see I'm pushing on the bottom edge here, I'm pushing on the side edge to that stud, across the stop from the stack to the edge of that, and just slowly pushing it down. It helps if you get it real wet with glue when you have a worry like that. And there are some slower glues that give you more time. Same thing over here. I ended up with that 2x8. Where is he? Anyway, over there. And the 2x4, all as leverage. And I ended up just being able to turn that 2x8 in fully behind the hub and really push that way and leave tension on stuff. So I don't have the amount of engagement that I really want to see there. And I have maybe a little light on engagement there, but there's a lot of glue in that joinery. In worst case scenario here, I can rebuild all of that. There's room enough, but I don't want to have to. So let's just hope that it ain't no thing. It also looks like we're going uphill a little bit to get turned out of that. That's the shortest elbow I'm allowed to use. If you go to a big 3-inch vent elbow, that'll keep you downhill from that type of flange and stay in the center line opening that you're allowed. Now this opening I'm not allowed, and I have that mend plate, but I still have to be that distance in steel off the bottom edge. So I just can't bring that pipe down any lower. Not so much on this side, but the other side, the hub is right in the opening. And so we might have come down a quarter of an inch. It could have made a lot of difference there. But then to move to where the hub doesn't start until here, even with a short radius elbow, we'd have been over here, and then we would have had to have gone this way first, all for that. It's just possible, and if we have a problem there or anything here, that'll be what we have to do. We'll have to go tip it away first and make enough room to turn in and leave the hub out of that opening. So you got considerations here. We're going to be using this plumbing. In fact, I'm not doing anything with the ceiling. So basically next week they're going to start using this plumbing, and if we end up with drippy problems here, no big, it's linoleum on this floor, I'll cut them out and we'll make the necessary arrangements all long before anybody comes to put drywall up. So since that's the case here, I'm going to call that done with that. I got the hot water cut in borrowing those clamps to push here. They were the ones I'd use upstairs to support the stub out coming through the wall, and I took them away. And then monkeying around with this, the glue wasn't, actually I take that back, the glue was dry. It just pulled the back paper off the drywall upstairs. So I had already cut off that lead end going up there. Everything was gonna be correct. I just buckled it all together. And then I went up and re-glued, pulled the stub out through the wall and put a clamp back on it. And now we're going this way with the shower water just to go up there. That's all we gotta do. So I'm gonna clip this somewhere. I'm gonna go take a measurement quick to see what'll get me from the surface of the floor up to the hot water connection. And then I'll give myself a little bit more than that. I don't wanna be wasteful here. And that's gonna put our hot water at the back. Cold's gonna come up, turn this way, and cold's going to, I think, probably turn in 3/4 and then keep going in 3/4 with a side outlet half. And that's what we're gonna get in with for that other faucet. So we're gonna let him set up. In fact, I just torqued on him pretty good. Hopefully he doesn't rip off the wall upstairs. I'm gonna go put those clamps back on in both cases so they're well supported. And I probably won't do that until, well, no, I better. And if it's gonna pull the paper off, it's gonna pull the paper off. But I'll get the clamps on there so it's not really ripping on it. And the thing is, once I've got everything going through openings and torqued around and etc., then you can use foam. And when the foam fills in around the hole and locks up and hardens, it really supports those bends, and and holds them there. So rather than wanting to spring away, they're really frozen there, which is a help. So let's get that much done. Looky, looky, looky. Western New York decided to show up. This is how we do it. Didn't quite get the tree off the front lawn yet, although this here is going to be funny because in the next few days we're going to have probably an Indian summer day or at least a balmy day, and this will all melt away again. Knock on wood. I'll get this tree out of the way, but I'm glad I did that digging yesterday out back for the egress. I got the backhoe taken home. You'll see that in the next episode. We're wrapping up plumbing here now. I also took delivery of a front door, but we'll save that for another episode. I didn't want to hook water pressure up, and therefore I can't close off this video series or this episode about plumbing until we've got the ability to show you people that water come out the pipe. And that's all glued up and yada yada. I got this far before Thanksgiving, and now Ed and his wife and everybody were out of town for this long weekend. It's another great reason not to cut in and do a bunch of new plumbing, turn the water pressure on, and go home for 4 or 5 days. Hopefully you don't come back to a lake in the basement or something if you have some silly thing that just lets go. It's nice to have somebody living in the place. So, and, you know, we are playing games with turning the furnace off while the power's off. So, all things considered, I might have connected these things up before I left for Thanksgiving. But someone has what I would call a felony. Whatever this fitting is was right on the shelf with what you actually want, which is a female sweat to 1/2-inch pecs. See that? I got all up here and then something was amiss. Now that is not 3/4 pec stub either. It's... Someone's going to know. Anyway, it really bit me in the bottom because I might horse around with this being off the wall here to resolder something, but that's laying right against the wall, and all this little feathery stuff wants to try and catch fire with the torch here. So what are we going to do? We're going to take the front of all 3 penetrations off and then unbuckle it from the wall and take it out of there and replace those connections on there. And then we're going to come back and put it all back together. And then we will put these pecs, crimp ends on there. We'll get things crimped and routed down the stud nice and straight. They're going to probably want me to fix the subfloor here in fire foam. You really shouldn't have what amounts to a big chimney where flames can lick up in and around the tub and get started in the second story, all because there's an opening there should you have a fire. So we're going to have to probably make a subfloor repair, and so we're going to have to anticipate where these are going to break that plane and how so, and wherefore art thou going to do that. So that's all part and parcel of figuring this whole situation out. This will keep me out of the weather today, and we're just waiting on the electrical company to come and disconnect us. It was supposed to be this morning, but it didn't happen. And so I had to call in and figure out why, and really no one has a good answer, but they are headed out here now. So let's get to work on this plumbing. I guess I left the tripod at home, so we won't get any time lapse of making this situation disappear. But maybe that's for the best. All right, well, the power's definitely off. And so I'm doing this in the dark in the basement. Again, that is not, it's probably 1,000 fucking degrees still. That is not 3/4 pecs either. That is some other thing that I'm sure is very handy when you need it. And we super didn't need it on this. This is the 3/4 pecs. I already put that other half on. And then there's this thing that's got like a very heavy wall as compared to these. These are pretty thin wall. But that is a real heavy wall. I don't know. It's hotter than daylights. So the other thing that I'm going to do is, because I've got a bell hanger to the stud on this side. So this length is shorter than this length because this one was right against the stud. And that was because I was going to insulate one and not the other. I'm going to make my life easy and make room for a bell hanger behind this one against the stud as well. So I just measured from here to there. It's 3/4 of an inch. Another round number. So if you're close with a lot of this stuff, and don't agonize over the tape measure. If it's real close to something round, it's likely designed to be that round number. unlike machining and other stuff like that. So we'll take that much off of here. Then we'll solder this stick back on, and we'll put that appropriate. Where is that guy? I guess he is laying here somewhere. The right man for the job. Oh, he's right here. Okay, so we could look at all three. Yeah. So there's a 3/4 orifice. There's the 1/2 inch we're going to put on, and this is whatever was in between with whatever. It says half something on there. I'm sure you plumbers are screaming at the... No plumbers watch me do this. It would be upsetting, and they'd be pulling their hair out. But anyone who knows is going to be freaking out about that. Probably it's just some like barb type thing for some other type of hose to connect to it. Anyway, it's not what we wanted. What my issue is it shouldn't have been on the shelf where it can be easily mistaken. It shouldn't be this and then that and something else. I realize that they're similar, but this here is for PEX B. That doesn't seem like PEX B to me, so it should be nowhere near PEX B fittings. So we'll take the 3/4 inches off this stick, then we'll solder this all back together again. We'll put it back together, and the next time you see this thing, it will be installation. Look out, everybody. What is that? Fuck it. I gotta get my Camaro out for the lake effect snowstorm. Only in Western New York, man. I thought we were doing a left, but we must have given up. Hey, I'm 2-wheel drive, and I'm still going somewhere. What is going on? Get off the road. Hello, viewers. Ed got our little patch into the subfloor all around that tub and made us some openings for the hot and cold water supplies that can all be foamed up with fire foam and constitute sealing that sort of off from the lower part of the house. And so I'm going to go up and connect those up and put things together, and then we'll close out this plumbing video. However, it's been a couple weeks. I immediately started prioritizing electricity, and so I'm just getting back to this now that the electrical inspection has been passed. So stay tuned to the next video, which ought to come out practically immediately after this one, since I've been through all of that stuff as well. But I never clamping this, and I'm guilty of one of these on almost every one of these plumbing projects I can remember. So I remembered this one. Does that mean there's another one floating around that I haven't remembered yet? That may be the case. But for now, I got to get in there and squeeze him. And I left him and moved on because I can't get in here with any of my toolage. And so what has to happen here is I've got to translate out the tangent edge of this circle to a vertical line out here. Same over there. Keep these out of the way. Make that cut. Take that piece out of there. Unhook a couple points where this blue line is hooked up, because we're already crimped into the vertical in both cases. But then I can bring this out of the wall through that opening, get on there out here and squeeze him, set it back inside, throw a couple of nail armor steel plates across this thing, fill it with foam. We'll never miss that wood that would have been armored anyway. Will it be as handy and sweet and keen and smooth as I would have liked to have stayed like it is now? No, but in the end, the most important thing is that things function and don't spray cold water everywhere, right? So then we'll wrap this, like I say, plumbing video up, but we got to get that much done here. Well, I was just about to cut these off and put the shutoff valves on, but I see this one has gotten bumped, and we're gonna have the same problem over and over again back here. We're gluing well to the paper, but the paper just keeps delaminating. And, you know, that's a factor of working with whatever this is for wall covering. And see, I see behind there, it's just more of the same. So we're tearing that over and over and over again. And it looks like there's no end in sight there. Although I could certainly test that if I had more than 2 hands, which of course I don't. So there's that underneath. I'm not quite sure. I'm gonna put those valves on, and then I'm gonna trim this glue off, and I'm gonna trim this up because it's not doing anything. I can come back and do that once the valve's on the other side, holding it tight to the wall. And I'll also fill around it so that the edge of the board, everything around the copper, more so the way that this was filled, I'll probably sand that back some and fill around that a little bit more as well. That's gonna be the more meaningful connection. And I'll just have to get, that way I can get the valves on and get up and running here, and that glue can dry at its leisure. More and more and more farting around when you're dealing with old existing construction, and it just seems like not a big deal, but it just slows you down immensely every step of the way. And when customers are worried about cost and they want to know why, dealing with leaving this tile here, leaving this wall covering, I'm going to cut in a vanity fixture up here so there's room enough for the mirror to be over the new sink location. This is going to go away. There should be a switch here rather than having to come in the bathroom to pull that, thing. And so getting all that done is really a lot easier if we realize that so much stuff needs to happen here. There's no bathroom fan. All the peeling down paint has been primarily because of the humidity going right around the pipe that holds the curtain into the roof space. That humidity is going in there if it's not going through this wall covering right to start with, but in and around that rusty old curtain rod that goes in to that situation. I mean, the whole interior of this bathroom should have been gutted down to the framing as part of this project and put everything correct from the bottom to the top. And you see in the end, the time and expense is less than 10% more than working around all this construction from start to finish. And what you have in the end is several times better than what you're going to have for almost all of the same expense when we're done working around all this existing construction. Nothing about these walls in here are waterproof the way that they should be. Nothing about the humidity is managed appropriately in this room. The trim needs to be replaced. The electrical outlet over there is questionable at best, and we haven't got any other outlets in here for plug-it-in straightener or curling iron or anything. That should also probably be something. If I'm cutting in a switch, I should cut in a ground fault box here and that fixture box up there. And that would all be the case for very little much more, but it just seems to people like so much more upheaval, and picking away at things, leaving a lot behind, seems like a logical way to go about mitigating cost. It's almost always not the case. Learn from these folks, understand it, make your peace with going to the bottom of a problem and working up from there quickly and effectively using methods that we have designed to be efficient, rather than tripping and fumbling through every little unique, custom, creative opportunity to be crafty and clever, because the overall problem with that is the final timeline that it takes, and then thereby the overall cost to whomever. When you're paying someone, it's even wildly more cost. Even when you're doing things yourself, it's significantly more cost still. So anyway, I gotta fix that, and then I can keep moving, getting this bathroom up and running. I don't want to forget to cover this as part of this plumbing video, but we use this water weld epoxy, which I've used to repair porcelain. You gotta have gloves on because every little bit of dirt on your fingers will get contributed into this nice bright white, otherwise epoxy putty. But if you remember the inside, I believe that the chipped up enamel on this unit was letting water in underneath the edges of the finish in here, and then it was working its way through there into this open area that's a bit of an opening left underneath there. I don't know if I can zoom in on that. But it was essentially eroded away. This is all rebuilt with a putty, with epoxy putty. Out here where it was all shaggy and delaminating, I had to rebuild that with epoxy putty. Now it needs to be sanded up smooth, or it'll just turn black over the first 6 months to a year of use from the filth that essentially doesn't stick as well to this as it would to the epoxy. But I'm trying to get this sink so that it'll seal underneath the drain the rubber gasket here has to be able to sit against this area and seal. And so I think I need Ed to build this up solid, very thinly, but essentially get from his epoxy repair inside out to here with that epoxy. Because I just can't trust these raw edges and stuff in here. And if you're gonna do something different with this sink, then you're gonna do something different with this cupboard. And then you're gonna do something different with this floor that was fit in and around that, and you're gonna tear this room all back apart again. So this is another case of thinking it's easier to leave all this stuff stay put and to work out in front of everything in here, assuming it'll be 100 just like any other sink would be. And I could tell you right out of the gate, if you're gonna do something different with this sink, you really need to change this whole setup, because none of this is standard. It's lower, it's deeper, everything's fakakta here. You'd have to go trying to find something like this in an architectural salvage, and then whatever here, it just spirals out of control. So we gotta get this sink to go back to work, or this bathroom's gonna have to be shut down until they can work out what they wanna do about a sink here. The plumbing and stuff that we did will all work just fine for any sink. So, that's why I went ahead and did that without a worry. But now we're down to Ed's fiddle fucking around basically to make this sink a viable thing. And that's the type of stuff I've been leaving with him to play with, because he's the one that wants to leave this stuff. So then you're gonna have to figure out the details with it, because you don't wanna see the bill for me to spend a day and a half all told in the resolution of something like that, while chipping away at it over a few weeks, pecking at it when it makes sense to get to this part of it or that part of it. You end up with a hard amount of cost that's just outrageous when viewed against blowing through this room and removing that when we were doing demo, right into the dumpster with everything else or whatever, set it aside. When I did the floor in here, underlayment the full room, the linoleum the full room, put a $50 pedestal sink there. All the other rough-in plumbing stuff is the same. Tie in that sink with the sink upstairs all at the same time, all the same stuff, boom, boom, boom. And the collateral gains from doing that versus working around this old sink would be significant. But you can only twist people's arms so much. So we didn't twist, and here we are with this. Let's see how that pans out now. All right, let's foam this bad boy up. Of course, working with Yep. Okay, that suits me right there. I don't want to drop any of this foam on the floor anywhere. In here, we've got this little area to juice up here. Right there. And then, again, we'll drop that little curd/turd. We'll come down here. And we'll juice this up real good under there. I use that clip on the left on the hot to pull it over. See that little tab right there? That my crimp tool, I'm gonna have to double check this, but everything seems to be sealed, the water pressure's on, but it makes that sharp little tail, and I don't want that cutting into the cold line over time. So I isolated them with this thing here, and I'm gonna further lock that in with the foam, which I'm not doing, or I didn't do, until I had the water pressure come on. And we see that we aren't springing leaks, because certainly don't want to play games digging the water stuff back out of foam or ripping the foam back out of the way to get down to changing this setup. You've got to have clearance. You see me make more clearance here, make that hole far larger, just to get the wiggle room that I needed to get those fittings and stuff in place. Now this moisture is not going to do anything but help this foam swell up bigger and work better, so that's good. No problems with that. Polyurethane uses humidity to inflate or moisture. So again, that being wet from that little leak that I discovered, the one little leak, and it was from a band clamp that I hadn't gotten in there to crimp yet because he was in a tough spot before, and I just moved on. That's what ends up happening. I really struggle with letting myself do that, because I know when I just skip one, that'll be the one that I've forgotten later when I come to turn everything on and there's a leak. So, like I said, classic. Had a little leaker right there, but I immediately identified it, crimped it, and we look pretty good so far too. So that's good enough right there for me. Leave those weird little spider webby things. I'm having more luck with the Loctite brand Great Stuff. I bought a flat of the expanding foam fire block. I bought a flat of the Great Stuff brand. Came with their proprietary reusable no drip tip. It's just a little horse shit, doesn't work worth a shit. Just as soon have these. I buy these straw tips in the dozens in a bag on Amazon, and so then I don't have any of them here, but I normally just bring out a regular old. Then you can just walk away from this like it is. When you come back to use it, just spin this one off, put a fresh one on there. Instead of getting one per can, you've got plenty, and that's just the best way to reuse a can within a reasonable amount of time. They don't really keep, so don't plan on that happening. But while we're right here, if nothing's leaking and I'm running foam that I don't have anywhere else to go with, I'll get this all fire blocked. There and there. And the drain area. Make a big show of having put it in and around those openings. For now, skis, leave that to hit the floor and cure up there. All right. Try to think of anywhere else. Oh, over here we had our inspection and we passed. They haven't been turned back on yet that I know of. I'm not going to lick this panel just in case they came and I didn't know. I'm going to need a ladder to get up there, or a stool or a chair, and we're all done coming through there for now. So that could get, I'm just trying to make use of the rest of this can. Easiest thing to do is just use a full can every time you're messing around with it. Let that stuff juice up there. Get the ground hole juiced up. This one all juiced up. And this one all juiced up. And this one. Oh yeah, baby. Wipe that off there. We got where we go outside with the grounds. And and a little clip that let go of that PEX. I'll get him. This guy we don't need right now. He's not in the center, so we're not going to run a wire through there. So I'm just going to run around and use some more of this foam up. Ooh, let there be light. And then we'll get back to the electrical here that won't be a part of this plumbing video. Sorry, that's for next week. or the following video. This one here is potable water. And we're all done all the way up through the kitchen and bathroom. Still got to put that drain together, but we know that the water supply works just fine. That kitchen will work. We got to do a slop sink faucet, the bathroom and all that, finished plumbing in the basement. But for right now, the rough-in potable water and a relatively significant amount of fixtures have been connected up. This thing's hanging out here ready. Those, if I turned them, would spray water. Same with the toilet. Toilet we're going to leave movable, and I'll leave that to dry now, until we get the 2 pieces of drywall off here and put a new piece on, and do all that with the toilet out of the way, finish it all, then set the toilet down in its final position. It would be massively unhandy to try to finish drywall down and around there while you're driving the bus, basically. So, ooh, I'm gonna go along back behind there, but that's for another day. Or, no, I'm gonna do it right now, but sorry. We're at the end of this video. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. This stuff's on. I gotta put that faucet thing on there. I can't hold out on this one anymore. We're all done here. We'll see ya.